Hello, everyone. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to log on, and I'm just retweeting this out. I am not on screen right now because many of you might have known I posted that I just got my booster, so I'm kind of looking like crap right now. And no one needs to see that. So I want to just welcome everyone. Good evening. Welcome if you're tuning in for the first time. This is the La Maison de Rouge Monday night weekly live broadcast. I am your host, Lucy Sweetkill, one half of the duo that is La Maison de Rouge. A little bit about who we are. LMDR is dedicated to expanding the BDSM experience by discussing, educating, and informing our audiences about the intersections of kink, wellness, sexuality, spirituality, and social activism. We aim to create a safe space for discussing these topics, as well as providing an avenue for our guests to share their stories and experiences. So thank you again for joining us. One moment, I'm adding our guests here. As many of you all know, this is the last month that La Maison de Rouge will be having our live broadcast. And so we want to thank everyone who have joined us over the many years of doing this show. We're really excited to have our last few guests for this month, but we will be posting all our archive videos onto YouTube Live for the next how many days and weeks it takes to post, I think, backlog 200 plus archived interviews. So, but I want to really thank our guest tonight is Miss Justine Cross. She is a femme queer dominatrix based in Los Angeles. She owns Dungeon East, a gorgeous BDSM studio in downtown LA with the infamous YES MISTRESS sign. Justine is an educator, a provocateur, and all-around badass bitch who also runs BDSFemme, an all women's play party. She's been featured in The Guardian, Playboy, Lifetime, and an upcoming major motion picture that totally spoofs Eyes Wide Shut. Really looking forward to that. Her favorite things to do include happy hour, oysters, going to virtual strip clubs, and going to literally all the holiday parties. Please welcome Miss Justine Cross. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Lucy. Nice to meet you again. Or no, have we met before? Were we in the other? God, it's like so many hot doms. It's hard to keep track of everybody.
Have we, I think we've exchanged a few things and definitely stuff online and DMs and stuff, but I don't know if we've ever officially have met in person. Just because I'm not actually in LA that often. Very rarely am I in LA. So, and you don't come out to New York that often either, do you?
No, I don't. I mean, obviously in the before times, I would come out. I used to come out like a couple times a year, but I would tend to just come to kind of like visit like friends and hang out and stuff. Like I didn't really session a lot there. I would get into these like accidental like FinDom situations where I'd get lots of cancellations, but like full booking fees. And I'm like, well, that's better, So, it's fine. And I don't know, New York, I mean, I've lived there and I visited a lot, and I feel like it's a city that's always there and I can come back to anytime, but it's nice to go and spend time in other places too. But I have friends who've been visiting New York in the fall, and that's definitely one of my favorite times to go.
Yeah, it is a beautiful time in the fall. Now it's starting to get cold. So, well, anytime we have a new guest on our show, we always like to start it off with your origin story. So your origin story is basically however far back you want to go, to childhood memories of bullying boys and girls and everyone in between, to basically how did Justine Cross become Justine Cross?
Well, when you're mentioning childhood memories, it like, flashed before my eyes of, the movie A Princess Bride, where there's like they have him in the torture scene where it's like we're going to take like years off your life, and, that torturing that man. And have you seen that movie? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love it.
that was like exciting. And it's like, why is that exciting? I don't know, but it is. So there's that sort of memory, but I think the one that I always talk about more is when I was in high school. My friends gave me this book, I Was a Teenage Dominatrix by Shauna Kenny. It's a memoir, and they said, I think you just be really good at this. And wow, I am. And I'm still friends with the person who gave me that book, and they've been in my dungeon and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I have a background in literature. Well, not a background. I have degrees in literature and psychology, and I thought I'd go into higher education or grad school, but this is working out really, really well for me, and I love it. So, yeah.
How long have you been in the industry now?
15 years. It's my 15-year horrorversary in like August.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So, let's explore your past. So you had someone give you this book. So what about you made them think, or other people think, like this is where you would be good at? This is kind of you.
I'm a bitch. No, I think I can be pretty intense. I mean, I think like when I do things like this and we're the mainstream, I like to crack a lot of jokes and I'm very nice. And people always say like, "Oh, well, you're very nice. Like I don't expect you to be this like big mean dog." I'm like, "Well, you're not paying me to be mean to you. It's expensive. This shit is expensive. It is a getting kicked in the balls is a luxury item. I don't just do that for anyone." So yeah, I mean, I think it's also just like I was lucky enough to have friends that were really sexually liberated and,
Yeah.
open and stuff like that. And I mean, I think it was like half joke, but half like this would be good for you. And I mean, it was, and it is, and it's like, really wonderful about like having my own independent business and, doing things for myself. And it's like I like being the person who is in charge. So, and they know that about me.
And all right, so when you first started, what did that look like? How did that come about?
Mhm. Yeah, well, after I graduated from college, I moved out to Los Angeles and I Googled Los Angeles dungeon and I started working in one. And, it's kind of interesting because now if you Google Los Angeles and dungeon, I come up.
Yeah.
And that place that I started is closing this year. So,
So, um, do you mind saying which dungeon you started at and how that experience was for you?
yeah, I mean, at this point, since they're closing,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not like this is some weird big secret.
Yeah.
The Dominion,
Mhm.
which is in Los Angeles, and that experience was not always the best. I made like some nice friends from there in the beginning, and it was like
Yeah.
fun to immediately be connected with like cool girls who want to like do stuff and invite you out. But I think like the actual like commercial dungeon experience was not like ideal or the best, and not where I feel like I learned my craft or training, except for sort of like a business a guide of like what not to do and how not to treat people, which is also valuable.
Yeah.
How not to do things. There's good examples of that. That's helpful too to run your business and yourself.
So where would you say you learned the most and your craft?
Mhm. I definitely say that I learned the most from play partners that were male switches, because they could
Uh,
really tell me from both sides of things, like what it was like being in the submissive role, but also help guiding me as a top. And I learned just the most from them. But it's honestly, so much of it is just experience, and it's like even though I'm a very skillful dom,
yeah.
I would say that my power is more from like the feeling and experience you get from just being in the same room with me. And yeah, I have like a fancy dungeon and like fancy toys and fancy
Yeah.
outfits and all of that. But it's like it's so just about like me dialing into that person in front of me or online if they allow that opportunity. It's a little bit easier for me to do in person. I find online, not that online is bad, but it tends to be sort of quicker experiences and
Yeah.
not allowing for like a deeper thing, which is totally understandable. But, having someone in the room with me, kneeling and really understanding what it is that they want and what it is that they need, for me asking them, but also just really dialing into what it is that they're seeking in a BDSM experience. And this is why, like, I have several clients that have been seeing me for 15 years and, obviously see
Yeah.
other people and say, like, you are just always the best. You just get it. And obviously,
Mm.
there's many talented Doms who are gorgeous and all of that.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. It makes me feel good to hear that from people.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a good thing when you're connecting with your bottoms and your subs, That's what ends up keeping you in this space too for 15 years as well.
Mhm.
Um, your dungeon is your play space is quite well known. It is very true. There is a infamous sign, "Yes, Mistress," in the back that has appeared in many things, many photo shoots and other. Uh, how did starting your dungeon start for you? Like, was it being at a house that you were kind of like, I want to do my own thing? How did that all come about for you?
Yes. Well, being a dom was something I was doing part-time for many years until I kept getting laid off and realizing like, okay, let's just do this full-time for a minute. So
Yeah,
moving it to full-time obviously allowed me to book a lot more sessions and make a lot more money. And I realized that um, I was essentially paying for someone's mortgage. And then, for all the rentals I was doing there and, not getting anything out of it. And also just not having like 24-hour access and not really having things like up to a level, like to a standard level of cleanliness and care that like I needed and my
yeah,
clients needed. So it just, worked out that way that it was like a necessity on many levels to start Dungeon West. First, actually, about 10 years ago. And then I had that space for about 10 years and we closed in October of 2020 because of the pandemic.
yeah,
So I closed one space and then, but I had Dungeon East and I started that space in like 2015.
yeah,
And then that space continues. So, but the space is, Los Angeles is very expensive, like New York. Um, so when I created that space, or both spaces, it was always with the intention to have other people rent it. So myself as a Dom, but also the dungeons were a separate business that
yeah,
coincided, but it was always meant for other people to use. And being in Los Angeles, we obviously have a lot of production, both like, from the smaller side, porn stuff, like solo
yeah.
performers or studios, but also like mainstream stuff like Lifetime and Playboy and things like that. So
Yeah, how did that feel closing down one of your studios? I mean, the pandemic has been not kind to us, I think we all know that there's been a few studios that have closed in 2020 at the beginning of 2021.
yeah, well, I'm very unique because I have two dungeons.
Yeah,
So it felt a little different for me than other
yeah,
people, I'm sure. But I mean, and having that space for 10 years, you know, it, it's been like a year, now at this point, and it was really bittersweet for me, but it was also just the best decision for me and my business. And,
yeah,
when I closed West, my partner and I actually upgraded our life living situation to a really gorgeous 3-bedroom condo. So
yeah,
it was, I think if I didn't do that, and I basically did that in an act of self-care because I knew that I'd be really sad, but it was also like being in this space for like a year pretty much by myself and just like one other person like shooting with me was really sad. The space was always meant for like other people and lots of other things happening. And, you know, with the timing wise of when the lease was over and it being before the election,
Yeah.
there was really, you know, even just moving into a new space where we're like, oh, should we go to Costa Rica now? Like, you know, so it was,
Yeah.
it was absolutely the best decision. I think that people, I know that a lot of people miss Dungeon West so much and it was so transformative and amazing to them. But, and it's interesting because I also see like what that space has inspired. It's inspired at least two other spaces that have actually told me, we are copying you because what you did is so amazing and we love it. And even Dungeon East has like inspired other spaces and, you know, people and stuff. So that makes me feel really happy. It's like, you know, this is like one chapter that ended, but I'm happy with what I did. And it wasn't like my fault that we had to close. And it wasn't like anyone kicking me out. It was just like, wow, public safety is important. Like no one's in
Yeah.
here. And, you know, I don't have such a robust shooting and that kind of thing where it makes sense for me to have that entire thing. So now I'm sitting in my dungeonette, which is in the middle of redecorating. So some of Dungeon West is here and some of Dungeon West is at Dungeon East. So, you know, just reshuffling everything.
That's, you know, a different situation than other people, but still,
Mm,
you know, having something open for so long, but so many people had to shuffle, right?
yeah.
And you still have such a beautiful place that I know so many people use. So
Mhm.
it's always good to have that for the
Yeah.
community as well. Um, I'd love to know more about your BDSFemme. Tell
Yeah.
us about this play party.
I hope you come. Yeah, so BDSM is something I started, I guess also like 2016, 2015. And what is time? It's so hard time with the pandemic in Los Angeles where there's no seasons. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
So, so I started that as a play party for cis and trans women. So you don't have to be gay to come, but you probably will be before you leave, is what we always say. But it is usually people in the LGBTQ community who come, but there are some like straight women who come because they know that it's going to be a safe space and they're not, you know, nothing, not that, you know, men are not the only predatory bad people, but like mostly it's men. So anyway, so the way that we set up the play party is I hire a few different people, like usually 2 to 3 people who are set up in stations. So we might have like an impact play station or electro play or bondage or boot blacking. So everyone is sort of like
Ooh,
guaranteed like safe play from a professional or highly experienced person. But then, you know, the rest of the studio is also open for you know, play and people can have sex there and you know, do different kinds of things. And you know, we just got a Sibian, so that's exciting. So we set it up like that, and that's we have that every other month, and then we alternate that with Deviant, which is an all gender queer play party that we used to have at West, but now of
yeah.
course we're moving over to East and having those play parties run every other month or every month, but alternating with each other.
Yeah. So when did you start those back up?
So we started, oh yeah, so most of what I was doing was in-person stuff
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, and then about 85 to 90% of that stuff was in person. Everything I did, my money was in person. We switched everything to online because of the pandemic,
Yeah.
and had a pretty robust schedule of online classes and events. So we started doing in-person events again at the end of July, and everyone. So that was scary
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, what are we doing? Oh, you know, everyone's gonna complain either way, you know. But I've been really openly vocal about safety and what needed to be done. So for me, all in-person events require proof of vaccination at the door.
Yeah.
I'm only seeing people who are fully vaccinated, and I've been doing that since the beginning of April of 2021. And then, but also, I very much came out publicly and said, starting in August, if you want to use my studio at all, like even if I'm not there, if you're just doing a rental, everyone has to be fully vaccinated. And that was really
Yeah.
scary to say out loud. But most people were totally fine with it and completely understanding, because like you in New York, Los Angeles also was hit with COVID very hard. It's very
Yeah.
difficult here. And I was like, I just have to have a hard line against this. And a couple of people like decided to not rent, but overwhelmingly so many people were like, thank you so much, like this is so important to us, and like it makes us feel safe, and now we want to support you more, and like we want to come in and do these things. And it's interesting how like a few people like, you're gonna lose your money and go out of business, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like closing out like my best 2 years ever, like so whatever. Whatever to that weird person on Instagram, it's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm good, and I didn't like kill anyone on my way to make money, so I feel really good about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good stance to have, because you do have people coming in and out, and it's understandable that you were fearful of like a backlash. It's such a weird time right now. Um, and everyone has their opinions and thoughts, right, around just the medical situation. But you got to do what's good for you and your business. And that's really admirable, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you. I try to do things that make me sleep just fine at night.
Yeah.
I'm good. And it's really, I say it's like, sometimes it's really hard to do the right thing, but like
Yeah.
no one ever regrets doing the right thing. And I don't want to regret like anything. And,
Yeah.
hindsight is 2020, all of those kinds of things. But it's like, you know, use it. Like I have a lot of spoons, and I'm, a bitch or whatever. I'm like strong, outspoken and all that. And I want to, use my platforms for like helping people and informing them. And, I know not everyone gets like the choice and gets to like talk or be in environments that they want to be in all the time. But it's like, the things that I had to deal with like during the pandemic of like people wanting to play with me and not be vaccinated or use my space or
Yeah.
throw parties there and stuff. And I just, I came out really publicly and like in an IG live, I think, and I said, look, like this is what I've been dealing with. And I don't like to, shit talk publicly a lot, but like I am not going to deal with this. Like
Yeah.
I believe in science. I also
Yeah.
like a good crystal and some sage, but I like math. I'm really a fan of peer-reviewed journals. I have a degree
Yeah.
in psychology, so I know how those things are, so and especially also just because we've been hit so hard here and we've had such restrictive lockdowns and stuff. And
Yeah.
I count myself so lucky that both myself and my partner both have businesses that we were able to move to being online and,
Yeah.
did our thing. So
I mean, all of us pivoting to online, which for
mm,
most of us who do in-person work, it was definitely a struggle, I think, in some ways,
mhm,
because like you just don't always get that like the feeling, right? When you're with
mhm,
someone in person, I'm such like I get such a high from
mhm.
in-person play that when it moved to online for obviously the safety of everyone involved, I was just, it was okay, but it was also like, as a sadist, was missing a lot.
I completely and totally understand because I'm also a sadist and just like, oh man, that feeling and and it's like, and even if you're in a pod with people that you can play with, it's not like you feel like super sexy and fun because you're like,
Yeah,
world's on fire. Oh, but we have a dungeon in here. You know what I mean? It's not
yeah,
like always, I mean, like sometimes that is a stress relief and it's really fun, but it's like hard to get there. So
yeah,
but yeah, it was really hard for me to make the move, but I'm thankful that at least I had, online stuff going anyway and just was able to kick it off all during the pandemic and everything. So yeah.
that's awesome. As someone who has such a public persona, um, was that a really conscious choice, or was it something that, you know, you didn't really have to think about as much, for whatever reason? Or, you know, how did that how did you feel having such a public persona? Because it's something you've built, definitely worked on and built, but it comes with a lot as, you know, as a sex worker, right? Being so public. You know, tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I always had a conscious decision to be like famous, but it's like a conscious decision to like make lots of money and do cool and good things. So it sort of then became famouser through those like other avenues. So yeah, I mean, again, I really owe a lot of strength to this because I am in Los Angeles and I had at one point 2 dungeons and they were constantly getting like mainstream production work. So I'd always talk
Yeah.
my way into that thing. So that's really why I'm able to do, or I was able to do all these things. And so then it just builds on itself where it's like, oh, someone saw me on this thing and they booked me on something else and, you know, doing those kinds of things. And also it's like, you know, I fit a lot of boxes for people where it's like, I have a, you know, an American standard classic beauty ideal aesthetic. Like I am tall, I am skinny, I am white, I don't have tattoos. So like, I'm very like palatable and pretty, but also,
Yeah.
oh, she's a dominatrix. So it's like, you know, I can get all that for people. And also like a lot of the shows and things that I've been on, like they want, it's not, they're not hiring me to be like, I mean, yes, of course, obviously some of it is like the sex appeal and like the sexy
Yeah.
worker and stuff like that. But it's like they also, they're booking me because I'm intelligent and I can speak about these things and talk to people in ways that make sense to them. And they're wanting to educate people, and they're wanting me to educate people.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it all works well and stuff. So yeah.
So it was never a thing about like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there, family, support groups that you always, it sounds like you've always had a pretty good support network.
Yeah, I have. I should really acknowledge that. Yeah, my immediate family like knows what I do. I don't really talk to my extended family because I made a really good decision when I was a teenager, and I'm like, wow, you guys suck. So don't talk to those people anymore. Yeah. So, they know what I do, and it's not like sensationalized. I don't think my family like understands what I do,
Yeah.
because like no one really understands what you do at work. So they don't care, and you know, or they don't give me any shit about it. My father actually, at Dungeon West, like he built like the closet in there when we were setting stuff up. So he built that for me. I'm like, thanks. You know, he doesn't live
That's
here, so
amazing.
yeah, I wish he was here so he could have done more shit for me. But anyway, yeah, and my partners have my significant relationships have always been supportive. Uh, you know, in the last like few years, like I would say that
Yeah.
I had like one partner of a year in the last few years that was not supportive of me as a sex worker. And that was
Yeah.
really hard and weird because I guess I also just don't really need a lot of support. Like, cause I always say I'm not needy, but I am demanding as fuck.
Yeah.
So, not, you know, and I kind of made that unfortunate discovery when Sesta Fosta happened and I was with someone who was like not supportive of me. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, what has been going on? So yeah, I have always had like a really good support circle. You know, a lot of my friends are queer and either former or current sex workers, but
Yeah.
also a lot of my friends are just really politically active and aware. And without me having to tell them, they already understand the concept that sex work is work. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very lucky about that. But I'm also very honest and authentic with people. And I think that helps, you know, to bring those people into your life and to answer like questions for a bit, as long as it's not super annoying. And that all works out for me really well. So I'm very thankful for that.
That's amazing. Yeah, having a good support network is so is just so crucial, but also being really open and honest about kind of who you are. I think it attracts people who are going to support that as well, um, right away. So, and I think it helps living in places like LA or San Francisco or New York, right?
Mhm.
I find that you get a little more open minded individuals, a little
Yeah,
bit.
a little bit. I mean, it's like, you know, we live in big cities. They're
Yeah.
pretty liberal cities. They're pretty into BDSM cities, but it's
Mhm.
also like you know, things being filmed here, like billions and, you know,
Mhm.
like YouTube things they do here. So it's like very much out in the ether where
Yeah.
like people are like sending their friends like the YouTube I did, you know, with Anthony Padilla or something about like I spent a day with Doms and you know what that looks like, and it's like just circulating in this way, and
Yeah.
it's not. I don't know what it's like to be like, you know, to do these things in like other cities, you know, because I've never lived in another city doing
Yeah.
this full time, but it is pretty good in LA. So
That's awesome. How would you describe, our audience always really loves hearing people's play style. So if you had to describe your play style, Justine, how would you describe it? If you were speaking to a new sub, you know, a newbie, how would you describe your play style?
I describe my play style as honestly a range player. I can be pretty, you know, go from sensual to severe. I love laughing in session. You know, I do really love role play, but I get like almost too into it, and people are breaking character. They're like, "Wait, are you okay? What's going on?" So, um, you know, I love doing tease and denial. I love doing electro play. I love doing corporal. You know, obviously things like worship and you know financial domination are also super fun to me. I shouldn't say obviously. I just feel like it's obvious, so I'm always like femdom. But like everyone's into femdom, but not everyone is. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, really, you know, and also again just like having like longer relationships with people and allowing me to go deeper and further with them to you know do other things like travel and dinner dates and stuff like that. It's not just like a dungeon like 1 hour experience. So if people have the availability and
Yeah.
me.
Something a little more immersive, um,
Mhm.
of an experience. What have you been I find that sometimes DOMs get into moods, right? Where they're like, "Oh, I'm really into this right now." Um, and it ebbs and flows at different times. Have you noticed, especially after the pandemic, getting back into in-person play, that you have been in a certain mood to do certain activities?
Well, obviously being sadistic is yeah. Yeah, I just, you know, I was having like sort of like basically like a week-long session with someone like
Uh-huh.
online just constantly. And we were just talking so much about pain, and he was showing, we would like watch porn together like every day and like seeing some really like fucked up shit. And I was like, wow, this is, oh my God, I'm really like getting turned on. So we were talking about canes, and I'm like, where are my canes? And I realized that I had left my canes like when I moved. I don't worry, I have them. Don't worry, the story's not
Yeah.
going. But I was like, where are my canes? And I'm like, oh my God, I moved them. They're in my closet, and it's been a year and I haven't taken them out. And I'm like, let me take them
Aw.
out. And I was like, I'm sorry, friends. And, you know, I took them out, and then, you know, we were just talking about all this like fun stuff. And then at BDSFemme, I got to do like 3 really heavy corporal scenes, which I like never, hardly ever get to play at my own play party. You know, I'm kind of busy as a hostess, even though I have staff and stuff there. I don't always get
Yeah.
a chance to play. And that was so fun because just like for me as the sadist, I was like, oh man, I'm so pent up. I had all these masochists who are like, I want a heavy scene and I want it from you and I want you to mark me. And I'm like, are you sure? Really? Is that cool? Because I'm like, you know, so
Yeah.
I definitely like fucked up some people at that party. I'm like, so yeah, brought out the canes. That was fun. And I'm like, hello, friends. What are we going to do next?
I know. I felt like a lot of, if you have any sadistic part of you, like pandemic aches was sadism a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely like some releases, like, you know, doing online stuff and things like that and, you know, get it out. But it's like, yeah, it's interesting because I feel like, I mean, we've all gone through sort of like an identity crisis of like,
Yeah.
oh, if there's like a sadist in the room and like no one heard, are you still a sadist? You know, and like that. Like that's what I felt like for like a year and a half as a dom and stuff. And I really can't even imagine how people can take off like 5, 10 years and come back. Cause like a year and a half for me, I felt like really awkward and, very strange. And I feel like I've, with the shedding of so many, with an entire studio and, getting rid of like, I don't know, like 3 fetish closets of stuff and just trying to figure out
Wow.
like, well, who am I as a Dom? And, like, what do I do want to do and how do I want to look? And I haven't really thought about it because you know how it is, you just acquire stuff. It just like
Yeah.
shows up and it grows and you're like, I thought I only had like, 5 leather dresses. Why are there 10 in here? Where did you guys come from? And so I'm just trying to like really like keep it pared down and actually like acquire things that I really want and that I choose because I feel like in some ways like fetish fashion hasn't changed in like 10 or 15 years. And in other ways I'm like, no, there's other stuff. I want to get like new stuff. So, if you're listening to this, I'm going to add my things to my wish list.
Yeah, going through things, especially if you're, with you kind of closing down a dungeon, consolidating, you must have had so much stuff being like, okay, all of a sudden here's all this stuff I've got to like do stuff with. So hopefully they went to some really good kinky homes as well.
Oh, I'm sure they did. It was very interesting that yeah, I mean, I had several sales before we knew we were going to close completely.
Yeah.
And so that was helpful, but it was like, yeah, it was nice that I was able to like sell and also just give away a lot of things and it felt like a good cleansing and it was like again, like bittersweet, but at least things are going to people who are going to be using them and
Yeah.
enjoying them and it's not just like sitting somewhere for like a year and not being used and it felt good because otherwise I would have had no real reason to get rid of stuff in like a massive like say a thing purge.
Yeah, definitely. So what does the future hold for you as well as, you know, your dungeon and this movie, this is this movie you mentioned, this major motion picture that spoofs Eyes Wide Shut. Is this out? Where can we see this?
Oh, okay, so the scene it's like I don't think the entire movie spoofs it, but the scene that I was in definitely spoofed it. So let's hope that I, make it. I don't know when it's coming out. Let me look up and see on IMDb if I can see if it has like a release date. It does not. Let me see. But yes, it's sort of like a throwback to a throwback. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything about it yet. It was like my first motion picture, so that was exciting. And it was like a fucking like almost 20-hour day overnight. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm like, whoa, like, what are you getting paid for? And it's like, yeah, I'm
So
like,
what do you do for 20 hours? Like,
slept really. I mean, it was like an overnight scene and like other people because I was hired as an extra, but I wasn't really an extra because like they wanted me as Justine Cross. So I was myself.
yeah,
So yeah, apparently that's very rare. And especially in Hollywood right now, there's like a lot of issues with like the length of shoots and stuff like that. So that was like really rare. I mean, everyone was like super nice. They fed us, they watered us, like,
yeah.
it was also totally COVID safe and that was fine, but it was like long, so
Was it
I
long because of how, like, were you waiting around a long time? Like, how long did you actually film for?
very little time. I think I had to be on set like I don't even know. I want to say like 5 or 6, and then they like let us out at like 8 the night. So I guess it was 12. No, it was like longer than that. There was like 14 hours. I'd have to look it up exactly my call time.
Yeah,
But it's like, it everything just takes so much longer because of COVID testing and
yeah.
protocols and stuff like that. But it's like, I'm a dom, so I'm like, getting food, and I'm like, this food sucks. Am I allowed to like get my slave to like bring me food? Because, and then like the day after, and then like when we were done, I just like went to his house, and I'm like, I'm exhausted because he lives really close. And I'm like, I'm going to go to bed, and you're going to make me an omelet when I wake up. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, of course. So I will, I'll tell you off screen what I did, but yeah. So that was really cool. Doing that first major motion picture, and let's hope I end up completely in it. Although I have a very good feeling about it. So for various reasons, yeah.
Yeah, because with editing and stuff, you never know, right?
Yeah, you never know. But it's hard to edit out me when I'm wearing like crotch high leather boots, and like I mean, I'm just like one long swizzle stick, like a leathery swizzle stick. It's like, oh, no one wants to say no to that, even if I'm not your cup of tea, I suddenly am.
So what are your plans for Dungeon East? Have you kind of consolidated everything and it's exactly how you want it, or are you still kind of working on putting things from Dungeon West to Dungeon East and the future for you as well, and projects that you're working on?
Yes. Well, Dungeon East just had a bunch of upgrades. I just took some new
Got it.
photos, so I will be posting those shortly.
Awesome.
So that was really nice to kind of get in there and like reorganize and realize what's working and what's not, and just be hyper focused on that studio for the last year. And now that I've had just one studio for a year, I don't know how I was running two studios for so long at such a high volume, because like now I'm like exhausted. I was like, how is this? And I'm closer to that one anyway. So yeah, Dungeonies, just keep on coming on over, and we're just
Yeah.
going to keep doing like our classes and events, and which again are going to be in person, but we'll continue doing online stuff as well. But so there's that. For me, yeah, I mean, like the pandemic like set back like a few things that I had in motion like everybody else. So I'm like, well, yeah. I think I want to continue working in more mainstream stuff, and also just having like my own platform to do that, because I'm always getting hired for other people's gigs, which is great and awesome. And I've learned a lot and gotten a lot of experience that way. But I really
Mhm.
want to do something in my own platform, like whether it's doing like more YouTube things, like toy
Yeah.
tutorials, podcasts and stuff like that. I mean,
Nice.
yeah, I also just haven't had a lot of vacation time. So next year I'm like looking forward to hopefully getting back onto like my regularly scheduled, like, migration pattern, as I call it, and doing stuff like that. I think that, well, I know I'm an overachiever. So, all the things that I'm doing, I'm like, oh, but I could do more. There's more and other things. And it's like, coming out ahead like these last 2 years, it's just like, I really want to take some time and space to just congratulate myself for like that huge
Yeah.
accomplishment, and just being with my partner, and like being like even more in love, and just feeling like so wonderful, and just we survived, we thrived, and like, fuck it, let's throw a party now. That's like my mood.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely get you on that, right? Like, oh man, it's been a time for all of us, especially sex workers. And I know that you were dealing with some censorship recently too on Instagram, right?
No.
Like, yeah,
Who
I
knows?
remember.
Yeah, yes, I was permanently disabled on TikTok, but I got it back. And I was
Okay.
also permanently disabled on Instagram, but I got it back. So, yeah. Hmm. Well, yeah, I we think that I got disabled on Instagram because I came out in public support of a Black trans woman. And she was having a very direct conversation with someone at Instagram. And I was like, wow, this is
Yeah.
fucking awesome. Like, thanks so much. This is really great. Like, what's your Cash App? Can you drop it so I can tip you? Because this is amazing. And then
Yeah.
mysteriously within 24 hours, my Instagram was disabled.
Wow.
So yeah, luckily I got it back. Um, I think that my overall like take on these things is, you know, meta as it now will might
Yeah.
be in the future, um, is like kind of not the best run business platform, but yet we all kind of need it for our business.
Yeah.
Because I think that, not that I think, I know that discrimination is happening against a lot of different kinds of accounts and not just sex workers, but we live in this echo chamber and like all we know is sex workers and all we see is like, oh my God, this person got disabled or this is missing. But it's like happening to everyone for both like violating terms of service and also just for not violating terms of service. So I think that overall is that, I'm always making sure that I'm on many different platforms and not ever relying on one thing because that's never a good idea. Whether it's like
Yeah.
one social media platform or one money making platform, and that would be true whether you're a sex worker or not. But certainly, like sex workers are marginalized and face a higher degree of discrimination. So that's something to be hyper aware of and to connect with people in your community and
Yeah.
business groups to help you with that. So,
I
yeah.
agree very much. You got to
Mhm.
diversify, especially in our line of work, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to open it up to questions from our audience. There is one question I'm not going to bring up, but I will ask it in a different version because this person seems to always ask about this, but it seems to be something they're just getting off on.
Mhm.
However, I can change it around the question, which would be I'm going to change it to, what was your first kinky experience that you would describe was your first kink experience?
Hmm. I think it was when I was in, I guess I'll say I was 18. And like, um, I was close enough to, I was 18. Okay, I was 18 for the purposes of the story. Nothing like weird happened, but let's
Yeah.
not make it weird. So I was 18 and this guy was saying like, "Oh, I'm really good at giving foot massages." And I said, "Okay, well, give me a foot massage." And I'm like, "Now." And he like undid my in public and he undid my sandal and which, I mean, honestly, this boy was also 18 and a lot of people like twice three times his age just can't get that right. So he unbuckled my sandal and gave me a foot massage in public. And that,
Oh.
I don't think I realized it was kinky then, but like now, like totally had a foot fetish and into some kind of public play. So, wherever you are. Yeah.
So a foot worship was your first kind of kinky experience without knowing it. How about your first knowing kinky experience where you knew for sure, like, I'm doing something kinky?
I don't know. I don't know if I can really connect to like a first experience. I just feel like
Yeah.
I've been always like really like open like sexually and with my partners having like really good, at least in that way, partners about like
Yeah.
kink and like and sexual openness and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So more in your personal life and just always exploring, you
Hmm.
would say.
Yeah.
We do have a question here that I will pop up. Greetings, Mistress Justine and Mistress Lucy. Thanks for the wonderful interview. I would like to ask Mistress Justine, what are the most rewarding aspects of being a Dom for you?
Oh, thank you. Hello, service sub. I think that I wish I had just switched this over to comments so I can see things now. Yeah, I think the most rewarding thing is like when I render someone speechless and they can't even like find the words to say like how I've made them feel, but I know.
Hmm.
And it's nice in person when you get that feeling with someone, and it's nice later when you get the email or note. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, which is like that's like I guess officially veteran in like this industry,
Yeah.
and you know getting notes from people even like years later, and saying like, wow, you really saw me, and you seeing me helped me like see myself actually and what I want in this like life and how I want to change some things. So that feels really awesome. And I always welcome those kinds of notes and affirmations. So if you've seen me before and it's been a while, come connect with me again and send me a note and let me know how I rocked your world, like 10, 5 last week, you know.
That's really beautiful. I think that's so true, right? Just being seen by someone is sometimes all someone needs,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's one person, you know.
Yeah.
We have another question. Oh, sorry, that was my clicked the wrong one. We'll get to that one. What have you learned through your BDSM experiences that you are surprised that you are into now? So I guess any surprises?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think things just happen so gradually that you don't. I guess because I don't feel like I've had a lot of preconceived notions about like sex or BDSM and like what should happen or what shouldn't happen other than have a goddamn good time. I don't think that there's anything that's been like surprising to me. I'm trying to think. It's like, I mean, it's not like when you first start playing, I thought, oh, well, now I'm going to know all about like electro play and understand how to attach this box and electrodes to your genitalia and we're gonna like like I wouldn't think that would happen, and I guess that's kind of surprising, but it seemed natural at the time. you know yeah, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Like, I think that like some things like sort of come in and out of fads and sort of like honing a little bit more of my craft of like things that I want to do, but I think that it's more like because a lot of what I do is obviously for other people, and I think
Yeah,
that that's, I'm sure as a dom you understand it as well, Lucy, that it's sometimes you lose yourself a little about in your pleasures and what you want to do in your play if you're really always servicing other people, which is still fun
yeah,
and super awesome, but it's like hard to kind of remember what it is that you want as a dom when you get to do your personal play.
yeah. I agree. Um, Thank you. Thank you for that. Let me go back to service submissive. Can you please tell more about the online classes that you started during the pandemic to enlighten the BDSM community? And also, are you continuing online classes or more doing it in person?
Yes. So obviously when the pandemic happened, we were like, ah, fuck. So we made a bunch of classes online because that translates really easily. We did do some play parties online, but it's classes are easier. So yeah, I did my regular kind of BDSM 101 level class, but then we developed a lot of other classes. So I developed a class like specifically for sex workers that was for people who are moving from in person to online, which is just kind of like an emergency band-aid for a lot of people because there's so many wonderful educators out there who know their online platforms, but they're mostly an online persona,
Yeah,
or they don't even do anything in person. So making that switch was really difficult for people in ways that I felt like I could help them. And I mean, I did.
yeah,
Everyone who took the class found that really helpful because, as you said earlier, Lucy, that it was so hard. It's just so different. To
hmm,
do that. But the other classes that I developed that were new where we did a dominant persona class, a submissive class. I work with Sex Panther, and which is my favorite online platform for
yeah,
doing text, phone, and webcam. So I work with them to do classes for people because a lot of people were new coming into the platforms, and there wasn't a lot of info out there about that kind of stuff. So we did that. I forget what else we did online. I feel like there's more, but some of it was also my partner did classes online. But the answer is yes, we're going to continue doing stuff online as well as in person. I don't know, I might do it like a hybrid style next year, but honestly, because I've recorded all the online classes, they are forever accessible on Gumroad.
oh,
So
nice.
yeah, so I generally refer people a lot to that, because it's already there and you can take it whenever you want. And then I don't know how I'm not sure how this will change in the future, but for online classes, we did a sliding scale, because I just wanted to make it accessible for people. But I think that might change next year. I gotta sit down and think about that, because you know, this is my
Yeah.
livelihood and I do various other things for the community. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so all of that is online, but yeah, we'll continue online and it's already up there. So yeah.
That's great to hear.
Mhm.
Um, our last question, which I think is a really great question, which is, do you have any rituals for getting ready for sessions, and how do you like to cool down for yourself, for your own aftercare?
Mhm. Yeah, I think I love rituals. This is why I'm always dating Jews, but the Jew I'm dating right now, she's not really good at rituals. I'm like, what's this? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, you're bad at Jewish. No. So I love rituals. I love it. Yeah, confirmation calls 2 hours before, always. So that's like my opportunity to like start revving them up about like what we're going to do together. And I'm at my studio, I'm getting ready, I'm putting on my makeup generally there because of the whole mask situation.
Yeah.
I have like a certain perfume. I generally pretty much always listen to metric or Portishead stations on Pandora, depending on this. I've just been listening to that for 15 years and it's fine. I'm fine there.
Yeah.
And I've also added, because again, a lot of different people are in my space a lot. I've also just, I don't really like scented stuff, but I like Palo Santo. So we have
Yeah.
Palo Santo at the studio now. So we just spray that and that's like just nice, a good smell that people aren't allergic to.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of feels, it's a nice kind of like I walk around the space and spray that and it just feels nice to kind of like do that and add that. That's like a newer part of my routine that I've really enjoyed. So in terms of how I cool down for my own aftercare, well, it depends on how hot the session is. If the session is really hot, I'm not gonna lie. Like as soon as that door is locked, it's me, a Hitachi, and like a puppy pad or like something on underneath me with like the sheet, and I'm like, oh, okay, want to make sure nothing, mistress, whatever. I'm just like bucket, So yeah, got to make sure. So there's that. If it's not exciting, then I need a drink and I'm going out. Like I am a extreme extrovert. I love being out. I love seeing people. I think that a lot of like sex workers and doms are kind of like, we're just like we just like cats in our sweatpants when you don't see us all glammed up. No, I love to be out like 4 to 5 times a week and hang out with my friends and my partner and my sub. So all of those things. But I've also knew, as we're getting all better
Yeah.
with our business always, but especially in the last like 2 years of hardcore self-reflection, I'm starting to follow up with people more post-session, which is something I never
Yeah.
did before because I want to be like respectful of people. And I know like a lot of people have other things going on. But I've been
Yeah.
doing that more and I like that. And I want to feel connected with my clients. And like, I think that it's good. I am thinking about you and, enjoying our time together. And that goes beyond just like that hour or 5 that we spent in the dungeon. And it's nice to follow up with people and just kind of see what's up. So yeah.
That's lovely. I like that you're like, I'm an extreme extrovert. I need to be out.
I need to be out. Yeah. So much being out. Yeah.
Well, that's all, it's good to recognize that, because that is definitely sometimes the fulfilling thing you need is by like socializing as an extreme extrovert, you know,
Mhm.
because sometimes you're in that like dom mental space and it's just you and a sub. And so kind of being able to let loose a little can be helpful.
Well, exactly. Well, the joke that I'd always make to friends, because I need to go out like all the time and talk to other people, is that I would say, like, well, I've just spent all day like just talking to my cat and, like men in cages and subs or something. And it's like only the cat is good at conversation. So, need to get out. And also it's like, to just kind of be enmeshed in reality because it's like, you don't want to get too burned out. Like I'm like in a group chat with people and we're just talking about burnout and stuff like that. And it's like if you're having
Yeah.
these conversations all day that are like really specific and niche and weird, and it's like get some toothpaste, go jerk off, and it's like, you want to like have a conversation with other people about like other things that are, affecting us and in the world, and deeper kinds of conversation. Not that I sometimes obviously talk to clients about real world things, or having real world conversations and deeper
Yeah.
things and stuff like that. But it's like, I am definitely very social and love to spend time with people. So now in person, which is wonderful.
Well, I want to let our audience know, if you want to follow, or if you aren't following Miss Justine Cross, please look at the bottom of the screen. It's her website, as well as her Instagram, TikTok, Clubhouse, as well as Twitter. Your Clubhouse, what do you do on your Clubhouse specifically? I haven't really gone to know that platform very well. So,
Mhm.
you know, I,
Well, I've lived in this condo for a year, and only recently does the internet actually fucking work properly. So hopefully I'll be on Clubhouse a lot more, because I couldn't really use it because Spectrum kept gaslighting me, and
oh
now
no.
someone else. So, yeah, so I was on it, like I got an invite like pretty early on, but I couldn't really use it very much. So I do have like a Clubhouse on there. It's like just called BDSM happy hours, and I think everyone is joined, but I haven't done anything with them. But it is something that I do want to explore, because I think that to use more, and I have a friend who uses it quite often, but I don't know what's going on in there right now, but I think that for me, I really enjoy it, because being in a highly visual profession, and constantly looking at myself and posting content, it's really nice to have something that's just audio,
Yeah.
and participating in things like that. So now that my internet is working better, I'd love to pop back on it and do more things. But it's also just nice to have a platform that I haven't really heard of any sex workers getting kicked off of it,
Yeah.
and being pretty like pro kink BDSM stuff. So I'm on like all the platforms. Like I could probably do like an A through Z platform list of all the things that I'm on, which is an upcoming blog post. So, it's nice to have, again, like, don't, just be on one platform, social media platform. So,
Yeah.
it's good to pop in and stuff. So, and now there's like Twitter spaces. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the Clubhouse thing, but yeah.
It's so confusing, but I look forward to joining you on Clubhouse one of these days when I actually navigate it a little better. I have it too, and I'm just like, too
It's
lazy.
cool to be a lurker.
Yeah.
I was sitting in like a, XBiz like forum or something, and all these producers were like, yeah, we've been like locked down for like a year, but like, you know what? We're just on Clubhouse, and we're making a lot of money learning about cryptocurrency. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool. Because it's also
Yeah.
something you just kind of listen to and pop in if something's cool, or leave if it sucks. And like,
Yeah.
that's nice, because it's hard to, and that's what's cool about doing virtual stuff. But it's like, if you were to like go to something about something,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, what if it's good?
You
Then
have to
how do
commit.
you get there? And if it's bad,
Yeah.
you're like, how do I leave? So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really cool platform what they're doing on Clubhouse. I just have to give myself the capacity to like figure all that out again.
I know. I need like Reddit and like Discord are on my list to like figure out how to do something. But it's good
Oh
to
my
give
god.
yourself an activity,
Yeah.
especially when I know you're closing a space too. So give yourself a new project. It helps.
Well, we want to thank you again. If for anyone who will be watching this, please follow Justine Cross below at her website. All her social media handles are down below. I want to thank you, Justine, for being on our show and being literally one of our last live interviews we will be doing, because we have one next Monday, and then we're doing, Dee and I are doing a closing live at the end of the month. And so you're one of our last interviews, and I find it to be quite appropriate to finally have you on.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
Thank you for joining us and for being, doing so much for the community as well. I look forward to hopefully meeting in the new year when hopefully most of us will be traveling a lot more as well.
Yeah. Come on. Well, if you come for like a BDSFemme, then that's even better.
Yeah, I definitely will try to line that up. So,
Mhm.
thank you everyone who did join us tonight and who have supported us for, the last few years while we did our broadcast. Everyone have a good night. Justine, have a great night. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.